Hello there, my name is David Richardson and I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial. So I'm using a concept art by Anthony Jones, and I'm importing it into my texture, and then I'm adding it to Spotlight, and then I'm making sure that my Spotlight projection is off, so that I'm not using the actual image to use any of this, so that when I'm drawing or sculpting anything, it's not using the image to sample from. And then from the light box, I've just grabbed a shadow box tool, and with the shadow box tool, I've basically turned it off and then making a resolution higher, and then turning it back on, and what I'll get is a very dense cube, and you'll get some really sharp effects with this. And with Zbrush, when you're doing hard surface stuff, it's best to go sort of like almost high, less than a million polys, and when you use your smooth brush, you'll get some nice highlights on the edges, so it's always good. And what you can do with this spotlight is you can move this picture around, so if you have reference or you need to rotate, you can basically just use it as something to put on top, and you can fade it out a bit. So Spotlight's quite cool in this way. If you don't have a second monitor, then it's fantastic for having references on the screen. So with Shadowbox, what you do is you do a control click paint. So you basically just paint a mask onto the shadow box, and you'll get a shape will come out of it. So it's very handy when you have a hard time sculpting these pieces, or you don't want to be modeling, do any low poly modeling that takes so much time. So you can do some really complicated like symbol shapes and stuff like that, and you'll get some nice results. So what I have here now is I haven't drawn it exactly to the concept art, because what I want to do is actually use a clip curve brush to cut this piece, so I mean it takes a little bit of a hard work. It's a bit of a hard work to try and paint that mask and try and follow the concept. So instead of doing that, I'd rather just cut it with a proper curve, and this will assure me that I am getting really nice curves, because it's a clip curve brush. So with a clip curve, you can hold spacebar and move it around. So if you're not happy where you started your stroke, you can get a nicer cut there. And by doing the cut, you just simply press Alt to get the points in the curve. I'm pretty sure there's loads of tutorials, especially on Pixelogic's website. Always best to look in there if you're not too sure what you're doing with a certain tool. They have some fantastic tutorials on these, and I'm just doing this because someone requested it, and I'm just wanna fill in the gaps of the just spread some light, just helping out, and hopefully I'll get to do more, and it's something I'm quite interested in. I used to teach in a university or an institute. I think I used to teach animation there, but mostly 2D illustration and stuff like that, and lots of 3D modeling and rendering. Used to teach those sort of things with Maya. Lately I've been having to do some presentations with Zbrush, so this is kind of like good practice for me now, and I'm hopefully I don't burn out or anything. I still have loads of other projects I need to do, lots of collaborations, and also my own personal stuff. At the moment I'm actually also available for freelance, so if you guys know anything, let me know. So this is so as you can see with the clip curve brush, you can do some really quite quick cuts, and you don't need to be fussing around with trying to model or use the move brush and stuff like that. And the moment the shadow boxes produce quite a thick piece, and actually what I wanted to do is do a very, very thin piece. And there's a reason for that. So when I make it quite thin, what I want to do is try and replicate the like that sword blade edge of the of that piece. And all I have to do is make it really thin, and then I'm gonna mask it halfway in the middle, and when I bring this, when I pull it back out, I should have a very sort of smooth edge, or sharp edge. That's what I meant, sharp edge of that blade. And it should be cool. So alright, this video is a little bit long. It's about like an hour. Usually if you're concepting stuff, it can take a little bit more time to do. Or I mean, if you wanted, or actually no, if you're doing concepts, it is very quick to do some clay build up. Just build it up from a sphere, a Z-sphere or something, but you won't get the shapes that you want. But you'd be able to sort of make a nice concept by playing around with it. But for this instance, I'm following a concept art, and so I'm doing it quite slow and trying to be as accurate as possible, but at the same time I'm trying to be as efficient as I can, so I don't spend 5 hours on this thing or something like that. But what I've managed to do in this video is do this side part and the front part of the head, and and as soon as you get these difficult pieces done, what follows behind it are fairly easy to do, and since we're only just going to be working from an angle, so I think a few more videos, and I think I'll call it done when we get there. So as you can see, I've sort of made it really thin, and I masked it in the middle, and now I'm sort of making the other profile of that blade match up. And when I'm using the move brush, I tend to make it quite big at first, so that I get nice big curvy move modifications. So it's almost like using a soft mod in Maya or something. And now I've gone kind of like a small brush, because I've started to notice some jagged bits here and there, and I just want to kind of make that as exact as I can. And now you can see when I pull it out with my moved transpose tool, I get a nice edge, and just rotate it around a bit just so that I get a more thicker bottom part. So, and that's how I get these usually very clean sort of shapes and edges and stuff like that. So I do use the transpose tool a lot. I mean, it is very essential, and also masking is a very big thing. I think in ZBrush, really you should really try and use it more often. Even if you're gonna try and block out shapes, like even if it's organic, I would probably use the masking brush to like just mask off an area and pull it out, so I get maybe a nice chest or something, or it's good for holding your surrounding, sort of wherever you want to do your pulling out stuff, pulling out and pushing things in. It's good to have a mask around it. So if you guys have any questions, you guys just let me know in the comments or something, and I'll try to cover some more topics and try to see if I can do it a little bit faster. This is just okay, so I think and then you can use the clip curve to obviously flatten areas. So if you notice some bumps and stuff like that to your piece, you can always just use a clip curve. And I'm working in a very sort of like orthographic view. I tend to keep the perspective off when I'm doing pieces like these. It's just so that when I'm pulling them out, I'm not causing any bumps and stuff, and I'm trying to just avoid that problem. So sometimes it's good to work without perspective, but when you're working on organic characters, usually you'd see a lot of sculptors, they just work with perspective, and then you know, sometimes it's good to switch in and switch out into orthographic, just so that you can see it that way. Just see it in, you know, in different angles and such. So actually what I have here is I've actually duplicated the shadow box earlier, and I think I'm ready to move on to the next piece. Which is the middle part of the face, and because I'm gonna avoid sculpting and sculpting and sculpting, I'm just gonna build this again with shadow box, and it's a fairly complicated piece, and so I'll just avoid doing too much by, you know, doing it from a cube or something. But you could do it in ZBrush. You could do anything. You can start from a sphere, you can start with a cylinder. I mean, you could just start with anything and just build it out with Dynamesh, and just do some cuts and stuff like that. So I could have done a tutorial with a much more simpler object, to be honest, like a screwdriver or something, but just want to highlight the importance, I mean not the importance, but how useful this shadow box can actually be. And usually it's not very easy to work with, because you get a very sort of flat thing, and everyone wants to sort of like, and it's easy, and it's also sometimes easier to work from a sphere and then make an extract from a mask, build with that sort of like with that drawing. So but you don't get that sharpness, and then you end up sort of sculpting too much sometimes. So but I might do that later on, maybe. It's unavoidable. You with ZBrush, you kind of have to learn how to use everything. It's very I mean, there's loads and loads to cover, basically, when it comes to learning how to use ZBrush, and not just doing organic sculpting. Because if you do everything, and if you only do organic sculpting in ZBrush, it means you're doing the straps, the belts in Maya or in 3D Max, and it takes time opening another software, exporting an OBJ, importing an OBJ, placing it in properly, and you know, these things take too much time, and I see that a lot at work sometimes, where I used to work. I mean, I'm usually quite surprised how long straps take to do, and they shouldn't be, because it's, you know, it's already been solved in this new copy of ZBrush, and you know, it's just good. and people should just learn the new stuff. You know, it's awesome. You know, get on with the you know, get updated. So again, here I'm painted the shadow with the shadow box, and I've just gotten and I've got the sort of the shape that I want. I'll be doing some more adjustments to it so that it fits the concept art a little bit more, the way it's bent and angled and stuff like that. And what I'm gonna do here is very, very useful, and it's very essential to when you're doing the hard surface stuff, is whenever you know that this could just be subtracted from a piece, you should do it in Zbrush. Cause I mean, it can do very I mean, with the amount of polys that's already on it, it still can do it, and you get very clean results this way. So what I'm doing here is I've masked off the cube, and then I'm gonna use the transition tool to squeeze that shape, and I'm gonna be using this as a subtraction to subtract onto that mesh. So I have a so this is done with a separate subtool, and when you're happy with the shape that you're doing, all you have to do is make sure that the in the subtool, inside the subtool menu, on that subtool, you change this to the subtractive, into the subtractive mode, and it has to be below the mesh that you want to subtract to. So, but I'm not going to do it yet, and I'm also going to add a cylinder in there, and you'll notice that I've managed to rescale that piece really quickly. And all I did was I scaled it once with my transpose tool. So I scaled it once, and then I click on 1 on your keyboard, and this will basically repeat your keystroke. So a lot of things that you can repeat, and which is usually scale, I just hit 1. It's very handy, and that's how I do some of this stuff. And I'm merging those pieces down, and I've made sure that it's onto subtract, and I'm just gonna make sure that I have enough, so I'm making it a lot sort of longer, or adding more depth to it, so that I'll make sure that I cut it all the way through. Okay, so just comparing with the concept art. So I'm making sure I have a high enough resolution for my mesh, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge it down onto the mesh that I wanted it to be subtracted from, and when I hit Control Drag for the Dynamesh to execute, I get the subtraction, and this is amazing. So you can do everything within the subtools, and this is within the latest update of ZBrush 4R4, and it's good. All I can say is it's good. It's helped me a lot, and it's a good way to work. If you usually these like, actually this head part is all made of one piece actually, so later on I have to merge them all anyway, and the idea is to with Dynamesh is to, you can either add or subtract pieces, so it's very helpful. So here I'm trying to figure out how I want to bend this front part of the face, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually just rotate it with my transpose tool.
it's a little bit too thick at the moment. So I'm also gonna squash it, and I didn't really like the way this came out. But with the move transpose, you can actually make quite some curvy bits. If you hold down on the Alt when you drag on one of those points, it will hold down those other points. It will constrain the pieces part of that mesh, and it won't move. So that's quite a handy thing to try all the time. I mean, you don't know what results you want to get sometimes. And that's the thing with clays, and you just want to play around with it, and you don't know if it's going to be good or not. If it doesn't look good, just undo. And with the latest update, you've got an unlimited amount of undos almost. So you're quite safe. You're quite safe at this point. Before, you could only have like 2 undos, and ooh, ouch! If you made a mistake, there was just no way of going back. So I think at this point I've made it quite thin already, and I'm quite happy with how that came out by that rotation. This obviously still has a lot of work by the end of it, but what I'm going to show you guys on these videos is just how to produce pieces, and I might end up and this is so far, the first part is quite complicated, and actually that I've had to use Shadowbox to get these pieces come out. I mean, some parts could be just simpler cylinders and spheres, and then I'll just be cutting through them with some other cylinders, and then or add cylinders. If so, when you see a shape that's mechanical, usually you just need to see, oh, is it a cube or is it a cylinder? Is it cylindrical? It's almost like looking at anatomy. If you know construction forms, if you can see it underneath those complicated bits, if you can see those underneath those complicated bits on those primary forms, then it's all very easy to pull off actually. So at this point I'm just trying to line things up, I think, and trying to find where this front piece bends. So I'm gonna be bending it sort of backwards like that, and then I'll probably do the underside as well, and not so much. And as you can see, with the masking tool you can hold those areas, and that's very handy. And the one thing I like about the transpose compared to when I'm doing this in Maya is that you can move that pivot anywhere you want, whereas in Maya it's quite complicated. I'm sure that one day they'll make a fix for it or something, but I mean I know you could already do it, but it's not as natural as this. I don't need to think about it. It just feels quite normal. And the brushes that I usually use is the H polish and the trim dynamic. And with the H polish, if you make a very light stroke, it kind of softens the edge, whereas if I do a hard stroke, I'll get a very strong edge. So it's handy to play with that. And if you press Alt on the H polish, it'll build up the mesh, so it'll pull outwards. So alright, so the UI, as you notice, is actually a customized UI. It's not what you get
as when you first start with ZBrush. This UI is a bit of a mix of everybody's flavor and a bit of my own. And actually, I've sort of in my head, I like to see everything on the canvas. You can find a tutorial about this UI or how to get this kind of UI by Danny Williams, Point Pusher. So if you check his blog, Point Pusher's blog, you should be able to find a tutorial there, and which he has kindly done, and it's awesome, and it all makes sense, and I recommend it. You know, I mean, I see a lot of guys. I know some guys that have like few brushes on their UI, but when ZBrush has loads of other things that you can do with, you know, it's nice to have all of them kind of sitting there. I mean, there's no point making your canvas super huge or something, and all you do is actually sculpting in the middle of it. Really, I mean, the concentration is in the middle of the screen. It's just nice to see, obviously, your model. So what I'm doing here next is I'm actually again painting a mask, where I'm gonna actually sort of like push out or extrude another flat plane, another plane that sort of has sort of raised the depth of the piece there, and I'm using a auto masking feature, which you can find in the brush settings, and I've hit the back face masking turned on for whenever I have the mask on. So I know that when I paint on top of this piece, behind it, it's not going to be affected. And this is very handy when you're doing very thin pieces. So if you're doing something with trim dynamic or H polish and you accidentally, and if I might make a mistake here at some point where I didn't do a back face mask for my brush, and here I'm using a curve mask, which is quite handy again if you're having trouble with painting those masks in a very sharp way. And that's it. So yeah, now I was saying, if you go into the brush settings and auto masking, if you turn back face mask on, it won't affect the backside of whatever you're doing, and especially if you're working on a thin sheet of metal or small tiny pieces that you don't want to affect the backside of it, and that's how you work. And here I've done something quite funny is with the transpose line, you get a kind of like a red, blue, red thing, which is where the pivot starts. Well, what you can do is, if you draw a line, when you draw your transpose line, if you draw it outside of the mask, outside of the whole object, it creates a very it creates it in the default directions, which is the Z and the X and the Y. So the blue would be pointing forward and the green would be pointing upward, exactly within those dimensions. But if you draw the transpose line within the shape and not draw your cursor out all the way out, is you'll get the pivot to be aligned to the surface of the object, and it's just quite handy when you want to just drag things out straight. I really suggest watching those videos on Pixelogic's website. I wouldn't say this is prepared. This is just to spread some, just spread some more knowledge there, and how I do it. As you can see, I'm not afraid to pull things out, especially when your mesh is nearly close to 1 million polys. And I generally don't. I rarely use Maya anymore to create these base meshes, and And if I do need to bring something back into Maya, I'd make sure I've retopologized it and stuff like that, and or I just decimate the model, and I'd have something that's quite good for rendering anyway. So that's what happens when you try to use the clip curve brush, and it's going to use the symmetry to crisscross. It usually doesn't work, and the best way to do stuff like that is to use the subtract so create another cube or something under subtool, and then just use that to subtract if you want to have something sharp and clean. So there's several ways of doing it, and I think the subtracting part or adding part is the cleanest thing you could ever do in ZBrush. And when it comes to those symmetry problems that you might get, and there I think I'm kind of happy with how that came out. And it's a long video. I did try speeding up this video, see if I could narrate myself within the 30 minutes. It was just it was actually impossible. The video just went flying, and I was like, oh, no. Anyway, and so again, I was saying, with the H polish brush, this is how I get nice sort of solid planes, and make things nice and sharp and smooth, basically. And if your polys are quite high, which is around less than a million, and I usually do like 1024 usually resolution wise, and if I hit the smooth, then I'll get some nice highlights on my edges. And sometimes it's unavoidable. You get these like bad sort of edges. All I do, so like this, I get bad edges. So what I do is I'll smooth those edges, and then I'll just hit Dynamesh again and again until I get rid of those bad edges. So you can see I think I tried to do that on that side, and I usually just get it on the backs of the model, because I usually smooth most often. Yeah, I think with this sort of hard surface stuff, I rarely use the clay buildup or the clay, especially when I've sort of already made the shape, and I don't really want to mess it up too much. So now I'm using the trim dynamic brush, which is, it's good to sort of try and swap them out with the H polish and see what sort of effects you can get. The trim dynamic's really good for like breaking the edge and or adding form, whereas with the H polish it just plays with the with the planes that with the plane that the mesh already has, and you can't really do much. Whereas with the trim dynamic, you can it sort of breaks through corners and stuff like that, and it's very handy. If this was more of a concept sort of sculpting, I wouldn't really be taking too much time on one sort of edge, but I'd like to sort of be make sure that I'm happy with this piece before I move on to the next. And you should be able to notice now on the back side of this piece that because I haven't done a back face mask, I've produced these problems on the mesh. And when you Dynamesh this, you get the very pinched meshes, and this is bad sort of habits to if you don't use your back face mask when you're dealing with those edges.
So what I can do is I can use my smooth brush or make sure that I have the back face mask on and sort of bring back out those pieces, and that will sort of like fix that problem there. So I'll hit the smooth so that those polys would sort of relax, and then I'll bring it back out again. So there's always hope. There's always hope to fixing pieces. Yeah, I'm usually getting more and more projects that have to do with this sort of hard surface stuff. I guess it's because characters can't always be apes in or aliens or monsters, right? And some of them need to have sci-fi guns and retro sci-fi sort of themes, and when you do it so often, you know, obviously you want to do it in the most fun way. For me, this is fun. This is fun, you know, and it's easy and it's fun, and it hasn't caused me any problems, you know. And with Zbrush, you know, you can have a lot of subtools, and you still be able to organize it properly with Subtool Master, and you know how to just, and you know what pieces you've made. So at this point, on the concept art, there seems to be some like bumps and things that sort of pull out, and I'm just sort of defining where it does come out. So again, I'm using the mask to help me shape that area. So I think that kind of looks good where it is. Again, I'm using the trim dynamic brush to this part of the face is actually kind of a bit of like a concept sculpt in a way that actually I don't fully understand how those planes are done, and so the best way is to sculpt it really. And again, you can see with the back face mask turned off, I get those problems behind it, and it causes my sculpt. It also interferes on the front part of the face, and you should be able to tell that it's not doing it properly. So just undo a few more times and sort of make sure you got the back face mask on. So eventually I get the shape that I want here, but with the H polish and the trim dynamic, you should be able to always sculpt something that's kind of like flat, and you'll get some sort of like planar edges. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out how to get those planes, and a bit of a help with some clay and some clay buildup. You should be able to sort of create those lines. So I'm trying to do this as quick as possible, because doing this for a video tutorial sort of, or just to I don't want you guys to be too bored. So this is when you want to sort of, the sculpting sort of begins, and once you get those forms sort of blocked out, so it's all about blocking. So once you've got it all sort of blocked out, then you can use your H polish or your trim dynamic, or mostly H polish, to sort of flatten those pieces down. And you can always use your move brush as well to move things around. Well, I mean, this is early stages. I probably, even in the final stages of this, I'd probably still be touching this front part because it's such an important part of the face, isn't it, of this robot. So this front piece will probably be in work in progress till the very end, as I even build up the other pieces. Hopefully I'll avoid doing too much on this piece, just so that you guys already got the idea, and I'll start working on the other parts. And the other parts seem to me much easier compared to the front part already. Funny thing is, sometimes I'm thinking, when you're sort of struggling sometimes in Zbrush, you go, oh man, I could model this in Maya. And then you go into Maya and you go, oh man, this is so boring, I don't want to do this anymore. It's a funny thing, you got your pros and cons, really. I mean, obviously you can do it in Maya, but it's very technical. You should already have something sort of planned out on edge loops and stuff like that, and especially with this sort of like complicated surface area, you're gonna get lots of edge loops coming around here and there from the side and to the top. Whereas here I'm just drawing the piece out, and so it's not complicated at all, actually. Just if you want to block out shapes, you can either use shadow box, you can either use a cube or a sphere or a cylinder, and then just use your clip curve to cut pieces away to create a very sort of like Tetris type shape object, you know what I mean? And or if you wanna do almost like a creature sculpt and then make it into a mech, you can do that as well, which is what you see most of the time now, I think, is and then this creature would be made out of lots of panels covered in panels. So and also just make sure you have reference, I guess. If you're following concept art, it should be good enough to follow. Or if you're trying to create your own robot, just make sure you have an inspiration folder of all these things that because it's very it's hard being a sculptor and a designer at the same time. That's it's something you have to it's something you sort of learn as you go, I guess. So an inspiration folder is cool, and also figure things out. How does this move? How does this rotate? Where is this cable going? Can it be hidden underneath this? And I try to give enough volume to the object, and make sure that those cables go inside and you don't see them anymore. It's design and trying to hide functionality. So I think I've gotten close to finishing this part of the object, and I think it's looking good at this point. Still could do with some adjustments and stuff like that, and using my move brush. You can change the matte cap materials if you want. These things are it's all up to you. But I was kind of like making sure that I'm not being too fussy, and just want to get this sort of done and start narrating it, and you know what I mean. And I didn't want to spend 2 hours on this, so I've only managed to do 1 hour on it. I would say this piece is kind of complicated, if this was like a robot that had a half sphere as a head, it would probably take 10 minutes. You know what I mean? It's but this is kind of like very, very cool and sharp, edgy, and it's almost it almost feels like a a mask for Sauron or something, you know. It's very sort of, it's almost like I got a crown or something. And then with the transpose tool, I can always make my adjustments, move it around, rotate it around, and I'm judging the proportions of this mech now that I have the pieces that I sort of want. And so I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do. And so now I'm gonna try and join these parts to the mesh, and there is a sort of like a slit in the middle of those two pieces. But before I do that, I need to create the bottom part. And usually it's good to try and test ideas and see if it will work or not. Sort of do it really quickly, and you know, oh, nah, this isn't going to be safe. It's going to just ruin my mesh. So what I did here was, you know, because I'm a big fan of masking stuff and pulling it out, so I tried doing that, but I know that this didn't work, and wasn't even too sure when I was doing it. So, you know, but still, that's the thing about ZBrush. You know, cannot be perfect, but you know, it cannot be perfect. It's just hard work and experience, and you know, once you've done it and you know it's wrong, then you know you're not gonna do it like that the next time, you know. So I'm not gonna force myself in doing this technique, you know. I'm gonna change the way I do it. So there, you know, and the way the mask has been done and all this stuff, there's so many different approaches that you could do this. I mean, first off is you could do this in Maya. Second is you can do this with a sphere and do extracts or something, or you can do cubes and sort of shape it like that and then merge them later and then flatten them off and stuff like that. I just found that for myself that if I'm doing a complicated piece, I'm just going to do it in Shadowbox first and see what I get, and then work around it. And since I'm not creating my own concept or anything like that, I don't know. I mean, I'm following something, so I might as well try and do it as close as I can right at the beginning, or else I'll be too lost in the concept stage and I'll be sculpting forever and ever, and which can happen often anyway. Which is no biggie if you get there. Think again and try and see if you can do it in another way. You know, it's all about practice and workflow. So here I'm just again trying to figure out the proportions, looking at it from angles and stuff, and looking at the concept art, squeezing it, and making sure that there's a gap, sort of like a linear gap within, like a space between the two. So here I've decided that I'm going to use a cube to make the shape, and I've just dynameshed it, scaled it, hit 1 to repeat that scale, and then here I'm just going to squash it in with the move transition, move it in, and then I'm just going to use the clip curves again to create a shape there that will be the piece underneath those, between those two, that actually merge them together. Yep. And so when you're doing these like complicated sort of like shapes, and you don't know how to create those edges, you know, like corners of a room sort of edges, it usually is because it's made out of two different pieces and not actually made of one piece. You know what I mean? So it's usually it's just hard to make with just one piece, and it's just actually easier to make them with two pieces. So there's those things that you can consider to do. So I think keep it basic. Try doing it piece at a time, even though it's going to be merged in later. So this is going to be a series. I should have I'll do a second video next week. Should hopefully have enough time for you guys to come up with questions and stuff like that. If you have any, I'll be happy to answer them as I do the second video. And I think by the second video I should have, judging by the concept art, I should have the sort of like the upper part of the body done, and then maybe another video just to do all the small little itty bits, and those are the fun parts, I guess. Because once you have the proportions and the main shape done, you know you're you know you're done. You know you're almost done. And the important bit is to make sure that your forms are done. You know, getting it to look as good as possible as well. So it is important. You know, just don't jump straight into detail. Once you jump straight into detail, you'll get lost into you know, it'll either be never get done because you've done too much and you don't know, and you're lost, and and there's too much clutter here and there, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be doing it in basically 3 videos, you know, or 4 videos. That's still less than a day's work, you know, and I can be pretty sure about it, actually. You know, it's not a you know, I can judge it. I can judge that I'd be able to do this within a day. But I have other projects, so, and I'm doing this by request, so, and which I'm very, very happy to do. And it is challenging me in a way to be able to think and be precise as well, and to clear my head out of these thoughts, you know. So please watch out for those videos. You can watch me. I'll be posting this on my Vimeo, so if you want to follow me there, then that'll be awesome. Or you can add me on Facebook. Name is David Richardson. My website is inspiredpoggy.com, so you can see a little bit more of my work. I haven't won any awards or anything like that, so, you know, I'm not that, you know, I mean, I haven't been that super active in the start of my career, actually, in posting online. But I've always been interested in workflows, and I've always wanted to learn how to do stuff. I started as a Maya generalist in my career, and I've been doing everything. You know, I've been doing modeling, rigging, texturing, effects, particles, fluids, and then Zbrush came along, and I was like, because actually before being a Maya generalist, I always wanted to be a comic book artist. So I've always had, you know, I've always wanted to do characters, and I've always wanted to somehow get involved to doing characters in animation and stuff like that. But the industry I was in when I was in Dubai, there wasn't any. There was only web advertising and architecture. So I've moved to the UK, and I've been doing advertising still. Worked in games and realized that a lot of stuff is being outsourced. So I'm not quite too, you know, it's difficult, I guess, in getting the job that you want. So I've decided to go freelance anyway. And all I can say is it's so far been pretty good, I guess. Can't talk too much about it yet, but you know, it's been good. So here, as you can see, with the clip curve brush, I've managed to pull off that shape. So this is what I meant by, with just a cube you can already do quite some smooth shapes. Just think very primitive shapes, and then you should be able to come up with that shape. Just don't be afraid to try it out. And what I'm doing here is I'm quite happy with the way that looked, actually, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna merge it all. And I just want to make sure I don't have too many gaps, so I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna merge it to the front piece, and then I'm gonna use the H polish to make sure I get a much more sort of flat shape, even though it's already curving around. But later on I'm going to be adding a disc there, which is like the side of his mouth or something. So I'm going to add that, and as you notice that you get those weird edges when you use the clip curve. All you do is just smooth it out, dynamesh it, smooth it out, dynamesh it until you get a nice curvy edge, or a highlight when you get nice highlights on that edge. And later you can always just use your H polish to clean it up again and again and stuff like that. And those things usually take time, and give it a bit of love, basically. I think that's pretty good. That's, I think, how I wanted it to go. This could definitely do with some more love, So like I said, I'll be working on this piece because it's quite an important shape in the front of the. It's the head of the mech. So what I wanted to do here is I want to try and sort of try to define that corner a little bit more. So it goes quite thin at the end. And I'm just using the move brush to move it around. And that's how I see it being joined. So I have to obviously sort of make the plane smooth again. So you can use your move brush to do this, and then I will then after that use the H polish to flatten that out and smoothen that edge. If you make sure that the back side isn't going to be affected, just make sure you've got the back face mask on. So that's why it's good to have your UI sort of customized this way, and just so that you can, you don't have to be sort of looking for it all the time and lose the flow or lose inspiration because you've totally ruined it or something, or it's all about cleaning it up. H polish cleans it up, dynamesh it so that those edges kind of merge together, remesh together. Now I'm getting lots of jaggedy bits. Well, no, I mean things sort of not becoming a straight line, and just the H polish will help you deal with that. So hard strokes make it kind of edgy. If you do soft strokes, it kind of makes it soft. So there you go. So we're almost nearly done with this video. I hope you guys learned something. It's a little bit long. Nothing's been prepared for this video. This is literally just being, just started doing it, and hopefully this sort of sheds more light, from starting from scratch to, literally zero, and now we have something close to being a first part of the head, and obviously also the most complicated part of the head, and that's also following a concept art. And I think with this you should be able to at least do a lot of other things now, because this kind of shows already quite a lot, and I tend to repeat these techniques over and over. All I'm doing now is I'm mirrored that piece, and I've merged it, and now I've dynameshed it, and I'm just going to use my H polish again to clean that up, that edge. And just having a look with like a metallic sort of shape. So the more time you spend on it, the more you'll make it look nicer, obviously. So just remember, nothing's perfect in the beginning, and unless you've had 100,000 times you've practiced it or something, I don't know. And small little details like that, I can just use a mask, just paint a mask, and then I'll just pull it in or something with a move brush, or I can use a deformation inflate, so I'll inflate it inwards. And I usually do that quite a lot for rings and stuff like that, where I can't sculpt all the way around an object, because it's really hard. It's really hard to sculpt all the way around. So instead of sculpting, I'll just use the deformation, which I'll probably do next week on another video. Let me know if you want to see more. If not, then I don't know. It'll help me to know if people want to see more or not. If not, then maybe I might forget doing a video, and it just helps, the appreciation or whatever. Or just let me know if you want to see more. So there you go. So playing with the mask, growing it, and just painting it. It doesn't necessarily need to be exact. I mean, it's kind of a very concepty thing, and I think I'm quite happy where how that turned out. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use I can use my move transition, or I'm just going to use my move brush and make it quite big, and I'm going to hold Alt as I do this, and what it will do, it will pull it backward and forward instead of moving it freely left or right as you usually do. And for little details like lines and such, I can use a Mech cut brush, and again, you can find these on Zbrush Central, or if you look up Point Pusher's website, you'll find these brushes, and they're awesome. They're awesome, absolutely awesome. And one thing I also like to do is I like to move. Another way to navigate see, it's very hard to make a straight line unless it's horizontal or vertical. And what I'll do here is I've rotated the object like that so that I can draw a straight line. And by doing that is you hold shift, click, and then let go of shift, and then you can rotate like a clock. You can rotate it like a finger of a clock. And that's this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you.